Thank you, Viraj Prabhu. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the devotees from Vaman Kshetra for giving me a chance to have your association. Very fortunate to be online today with all of you. It's very difficult actually in this day and time to fly. It's impossible. And I was just talking to Viraj Prabhu how there was a plan actually that in April I should be coming down. But the good news is, I'm already there. And that is the wonderful way in which we can make use of technology. So Vaman Kshetra is an amazing congregation. I really am missing so many devotees association there. But real association comes on the platform of hearing Bhagavatam, and this is the best association we can have. So today, I was thinking that we should actually explore this wonderful spiritual journey of Narada Muni, because Narada Muni is the person who has given us such amazing transcendental realizations. He's like a building block of Srimad Bhagavatam, and perhaps it'll be nice for us to understand some of the great values that Narada Muni brings to devotional service. And in that way, we could use this time to reflect on how, by following Narada Muni's footsteps, not imitating him, but following him, we can come to actually reflect on our spiritual life better and try to improve it. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this verse is from Bhagavatam. It's one of the very famous verses, and a very practical verse for us to understand. It's from the first canto, 6th chapter, 26th verse. Namani anantasya hata patan Bhuyani bhadrani kritani chasmaran Gam paryatam stushtamana spraha Kalam pratikshan vimado vimatsaraha Namani anantasya hata patan Bhuyani bhadrani kritani chasmaran Gham paryatam stushtamana spraha Kalam pratikshan vimado vimatsaraha Namani anantasya Patatrapa patan Guyani bhadrani kritani chasmaran Gam paryatam tushtamana spraha Kalam pratikshan vimado vimatsaraha. I'll just read the synonyms. Namani, the holy name, fame, etc. Anantasya, of the unlimited. Hata trapa, being freed from all formalities of the material world. Patan, by recitation, repeated reading of. Guyani, mysterious. Bhadrani, all benedictory. Kritani, activities. Cha, and. Smaran, constantly remembering. Kam, the earth. Paryatan, traveling all through. Tushtamanaha, fully satisfied. Gataspraha, completely freed from all material desires. Kalam, time. Pratikshan, awaiting. Vimadaha, without being proud. Vimatsaraha, without being envious. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Let me read the translation. Thus, I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I traveled all over the earth, fully satisfied, humble, and unenvious. Please hear the purport. The life of a sincere devotee of the Lord is thus explained in a nutshell by Narada Muni by his personal example. Such a devotee, after his initiation by the Lord or his bona fide representative, takes very seriously chanting of the glories of the Lord and traveling all over the world so that others may also hear the glories of the Lord. Such devotees have no desire for material gain. They are conducted by one single desire, to go back to Godhead. This awaits them in due course on quitting the material body, because they have the highest aim of life, going back to Godhead. They are never envious of anyone, nor are they proud of being eligible to go back to Godhead. Their only business is to chant and remember the holy name, fame, and pastimes of the Lord, and according to personal capacity, to distribute the message for others' welfare without motive of material gain. So this is a very important point actually. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. So I would request everyone to please mute. Yes, thank you. Now this verse, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, tells us how a sincere devotee behaves, how he talks, how he thinks, and what he acts on. And this devotee is Narada Muni. You find that this verse comes at a point of culmination of Narada Muni's spiritual journey towards Krishna. And that's why the topic today is entitled The Spiritual Journey of Narada Muni. We are all on a journey in spiritual life. In fact, the word Ramayan actually indicates the journey of Lord Ram. And this journey that we have is not only the journey where we walk from place to place, but more deeply, our journey is the journey from which we come from the standpoint of being materially attached to the world to the point where we become spiritually attached to Krishna. Between these two spectrums, our journey is there. And in this verse, Narada Muni tells us how he passes his time in this world and what he did after the culmination of his spiritual journey. And that's why Prabhupada starts the purport, you can see very clearly, by saying that the life of a sincere devotee of the Lord is explained in a nutshell by Narada Muni. How did Narada Muni explain his life? Prabhupada writes, he explained his life by his personal example. So actually the best way of preaching spiritual life and Krishna consciousness is actually to live it. Until we practice what we are preaching, there is no potency to what we are saying. Because if we don't practice what we preach, then the last line of this translation cannot happen. As Narada Muni was traveling around the world, what he was doing was, as he traveled, he was behaving in a certain way. This is very important. Bhagavatam means behavior. Until we translate the teachings of Bhagavatam into practical behavior, then Bhagavatam will remain in the sky, or it will be what we call theoretical. So Narada Muni says here that he began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord. And this is a starting point for a devotee, that we chant. And what do we chant? We chant the names of the Lord. We chant the names of the Lord in two ways. We chant the names of the Lord because the names of the Lord is unlimited. So there is no end to chanting Krishna's names. We have a lifetime, and we can use that lifetime to chant the holy name and fame of God. And that is why the word repeated recitation is given. Repeated recitation means patan. It means that we can repeatedly read, repeatedly hear about Krishna. And when we do that, we'll find that there is no end to our bliss and our joy. But the important thing here also is the word anantasya not only refers to the unlimited nature of the Lord, but it also refers to the fact that there is no limit to being and practicing devotional service. This is very important. So, Namani Anantasya, actually the import of it is that all the time, as Narada Muni moved around the world, and as he still does today, he has only one pastime. And that pastime is, he's just passing his time, chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord. And he's repeating it, and he's reciting it. And in doing so, He's freed from the formalities of the material world. What does that mean? On one level, formalities of the material world refers to the four junctions of our lives: birth, death, old age, and disease. And we are all within that spectrum of that formality. The moment we are born into the world, the formality of birth is there. And then as we live, the formality of disease and old age is there. And eventually there will always be the formality of death. So these are the formalities of the world, the four stations of life. And within the formalities of the world, the three modes of material nature. The three modes of material nature, Sattva gun, Rajogun, and Tamogun. There is no way to come out of it in this material world. Even in devotional service, if one is not pure in devotional service, Kapila Dev instructs his mother that even elements of mixed devotional service, the material modes are seeping in. So that's another formality of the material world. And the third formality of the material world are the threefold miseries. So the formality of the material world is always around us. And they are formal in the sense that they catch us. It's very hard for us to move out of them. And the last formality of this material world is actually the four defects that we all are prone to. We are defective because we are an illusion, we have cheating propensity, we make mistakes, and we have imperfect senses. And with all this, we are always bound. But Narada Muni showed in his life that the moment he embarked on this journey towards Krishna, he could ignore the formalities of this world. Death did not touch Narada Muni. That's the amazing thing about him. And he's known by Srila Prabhupada, described him as the eternal spaceman of the universe. He's eternal because he's always connected to the Supreme Eternal. Another point about material formalities of the world, freed from all formalities of the material world, is that the word formalities also refer to designations. Very often in this world, we are conditioned by material designations. I am so-and-so's father, I am so-and-so's mother, I am so-and-so in my work. Or sometimes even when we come to devotional service, we also have designations. We carry that baggage into the spiritual life. I'm president, you are vice president, you are the secretary, you are the treasurer. This is my service, I'm in charge, you're not. And by these spiritual designations, we actually become materially implicated. And when we are materially implicated, we can't ignore the formalities. Instead, we are consumed by the formalities. But Narada Muni was constantly chanting Krishna's names. He repeated the names and he recited the names. And because of that, ignoring the formalities of the material world was a byproduct. Very important point. He did not run around trying. He did not run around trying to change anything. No. The beauty of it was he could come to this because it was a byproduct of his life. Very easy. It was a byproduct. And so he could ignore the formalities of the material world. Why? Because by chanting and remembering Krishna, there is so much benediction. It is known as Bhadrani. Bhadrani not only means benediction, but benediction means it is always auspicious. When something is Bhadra, it means it's auspicious. It always has a good effect on us. It doesn't make us disturbed. Auspicious things always make us very peaceful. And in so doing, Narada Muni could travel around the world. And because he could ignore the formalities of the material world, three things could not touch him. He was never envious. He was never proud. And he was not envious or proud because he was always satisfied. This is a very important point. He was always satisfied. So this is the mood of Narada Muni. How did Narada Muni come to this point is very important. And that's why Prabhupada alludes to the life of Narada Muni here, because he took initiation from Krishna and he took initiation from his bona fide representatives. That's why we want to spend a bit of time understanding the life of Narada Muni. You'll find that in 10:26 of Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna himself says, of the sages of the Devatas, I am actually Narada. And Narada is considered by Prabhupada in the purport to be the greatest devotee in the universe. Narada is also one of the 12 Mahajans, the great authorities on the science of God. And if you look at 16:26 of Srimad Bhagavatam, you find that Prabhupada writes there that Narada Muni is exalted as the father of devotional service. And he's even referred to as Bhagavan, a term which is normally only reserved for the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada also says that the immediate spiritual master is the representative of Narada Muni. So in other words, any one of our spiritual masters, Prabhupada writes, is the representative of Narada Muni. And there is no difference between the instructions of Narada Muni and the instructions of the present spiritual master. That's how powerful Narada Muni is. And if you read Bhagavatam, you realize that Narada Muni is actually one of the great spiritual masters. And not only was he just a spiritual master, he was a spiritual master to some of the greatest devotees in all the three worlds. All the three worlds. He actually was the spiritual master to Vyas Bhagavan. I remember he was the spiritual master to Valmiki. He was the spiritual master to Mrigari, the hunter. If you remember, he was the one who initiated the Prachetas in the 4th canto. He gave initiation to Chitraketu Maharaj. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj when he was in the womb. He initiated Dhruva Maharaj when he came to see him in the forest. And many, many, many more. In fact, we have never heard of a spiritual master with such exalted devotees, who fill up half of Bhagavatam. And yet it's amazing that actually Narada Muni's beginning in spiritual life was just the opposite. If you read the 7th canto, 15th chapter, towards the end of that chapter, you realize that Narada Muni tells Yudhishthir Maharaj that he actually began his spiritual life as a very puffed up materialist. Very interesting point. Long, long time ago, Narada Muni explained that he had a life, and his life was that of a Gandharva. And his name was actually Upabarhana. And he was actually a celestial singer in the heavenly planets. And in that time, in a previous millennium of Lord Brahma, he was very respected, had a wonderful voice. Bhagavatam says he had a beautiful face, a pleasing attitude with attractive bodily features. And he was always decorated with flower garlands. He smeared himself with sandalwood. And he was very pleasing to everyone, especially. So the result of all that was, at that time, in that body of Upabarhana, Narada was actually bewildered. Upabarhana was always filled with desires for sense gratification. And these sense gratification he could not fulfill. So one time what happened was, Upabarhana and the other Gandharvas, they were invited by the Devatas to what we call a Sankirtan festival. Even in those days, long before we have our Sankirtan festivals, the Gandharvas were invited by the Devatas because they organized massive Sankirtan festivals in the celestial skies. And the aim of the festivals was always to glorify the Supreme Lord. And at that time, when he was invited by the Prajapatis. You all know that the Prajapatis are the progenitors of the universe. They are created by Lord Brahma himself, and they are great devotees of the Lord. They're given the great task, to actually fill this world with devotees. So Upabarhana had the exquisite talent of singing, and he was supposed to sing the glorifications of the Lord. But Bhagavatam tells us, or Narada tells us, that at that time, Upabarhana, in his previous time, he was proud. He became blinded by his God-given talent, and he was bewildered and intoxicated by lust. In the company of women and others who looked at him as such a great specimen of life, instead of singing the glories of the Supreme Lord, he started singing the glories of the Devatas and all those who were praising him. So that was really bad. And when that happened, the Prajapatis became so upset. And Bhagavatam said that they cursed him. They said that you have been given a talent and you were supposed to glorify the Lord because he is the source of your talent. But you have displayed ingratitude. And therefore, a man of your uncultured behavior, devoid of beauty and intelligence, good parentage and opulence, we curse now that you become someone who will be a very lowly person in your next life. So it appeared at that time that Upabarhana would end his life in a very difficult and tragic way. So Narada says he left his body, Upabarhana, at the end of that life. And he was born in the second life of Narada Muni, so to speak. And this was the second journey. In the second journey, Narada says that he was born, but to a son of a very poor maidservant. And at that time, all the opulences he had as a Gandharva were not there. His mother, was really poor. She was a servant in the house. Narada did not have beauty, did not have fame. He did not have riches. He had no education and no parentage. And his mother was just very simple lady. But she had one advantage. She was pious by nature. She was pious. And what did she do? She engaged herself in the service of the pious Brahmanas. And these Brahmanas were followers of Vedanta. So sometimes when these great devotees would stay put during Chaturmas, they would stay in the house of her master. And during that time, in the rainy season, they would stay there for many days. So what would happen? At that time, Bhagavatam tells us, they would sit down and instead of gossiping or talking about, the weather, the politics, as we do when we come together, what did they do? They actually chanted the glories of the Supreme Lord. And mother of Narada, when he was a small boy, she would come out and she would serve them. And when she served them, she would hear what they had to say. And because she was piously inclined, she received this knowledge very nicely. And very important, not only did she receive the knowledge, but like a true devotee of the Lord, she shared the knowledge. So this is an important thing that was instilled in Narada when he was very young. And that's why today he's the eternal spaceman. Narada Muni spends his life traveling around the world, not because he just wants to see the world like a tourist. He travels because wherever he can, he wants to share Krishna consciousness. And he learned that from his mother. So we as parents, we as devotees, we must make sure that we are never stingy with devotional service. Whenever we have an opportunity to hear about Bhagavatam, we should gather everyone, spread the word. In the Bible, it is known as spreading the good word of the Lord. That's what we must do as devotees. We must spread the word of Krishna. And so what did she do? She was a maid servant. She could not go out and call her friends, but she had a son. And so she told her son, you come, my dear boy, and you be engaged in the service of these great Bhakti Vedantas. Now, this was the starting journey of Narada Muni. You see, the association of one pious mother made all the difference in the heart of a son. Even though his life before that, he had a chance to glorify Krishna. Even though as a Gandharva, he was supposed to be more elevated than a human being, he did not use it. But Krishna is very kind, Prabhus and Matajis. Krishna is Bhaktavatsal. He's always looking for ways. In Bhagavatam it is said, Namo Vishuddha Sadvaya, Haraye, Hari Medase. The Prachetas in the 4th canto, 30th chapter, they always pray and saying, Krishna, day and night, you are using your brain. Hare, Hari Medase, Hari. Hari uses his brain to think of ways in which he can bring out all the living entities out of their misery and bring them to Krishna. And so that's what Narada was given the chance. Krishna never forgot that this Upabarhana had the opportunity to glorify him. But Krishna gave him another opportunity in his next life. Born to a pious family. And now his mother gave him nice sadhu sangha. And that is how his life started. These Bhakti Vedantas, Bhagavatam tells us in the 1st canto, the description of them are given in the 1st canto, 5th and 6th chapters. The nature of these Bhakti Vedantas is that they are impartial. To anyone they will speak Bhagavatam. And therefore when they saw this young boy of a maidservant, even though he was not a Brahmana, even though he was not, prepared, he was not enrolled to study, but he was a little boy who was eager to hear. So what did they do? When they discussed, they blessed the boy when he came before them. Blessings of sadhus are so important. We don't realize that we cannot make devotional progress when we get their blessings. Even a small blessing or something that pleases your spiritual master goes such a long way to protect us in our spiritual life. Even the blessings of devotees who hear us and who become inspired at any point of time. When these devotees pray, our devotional service grows. That's why devotional service progress. A very small part is our endeavor. A very large part is the mercy of Krishna and the devotees. And this is where they gave Narada as a little boy. What did they give him? In their causeless mercy. And because they gave causeless mercy, Narada's character, he himself tells now, he's now speaking in the 5th and 6th chapters of 1st canto. He describes his life, as a boy, now to Vyas Bhagwan. And he tells him that Vyasadev, as a young boy, right, I served them. And in turn, my character, through their association and their blessings, became self-controlled. This is very nice. Because of their association and their blessings, his character changed. And it became self-controlled. And he said that I was also naturally inclined to hearing. And Narada Muni said, not like other boys, I was not just running after sports. I was not naughty either. And I did not speak more than was required. See, these are all qualities of devotees. A devotee does not speak more than is required. Only that which has to do with Krishna, lovingly a devotee will speak about it. And even if a devotee has to deal with materialists and the world, the devotee is always mindful that his words and his vacha should be very exemplary. And Narada Muni became controlled. Why? Just by the blessings of the Bhaktivedantas. And one day Narada Muni said, just once, not many times, just once, he got the Bhaktivedantas permission. What did they do? They gave him permission to take remnants of their prasadam. Just their prasadam. And mind you, Bhagavatam says he only got one time. We are getting Bhagavatam, we are getting Mahaprasad so many times. So many of us who served our spiritual masters and who continue to serve our spiritual masters, sometimes they're kind. They leave some Mahaprasad for us. So how much mercy they're giving us. Narada took one time remnants of their prasadam. And when he took it, Bhagavatam says, all his sins were eradicated. All his sins. And the moment his sins became eradicated, what happened? Narada became engaged in service as a young boy. And when he became engaged in service, Bhagavatam tells us he became purified in heart. So the only way to purify our heart is to engage in service. Of who? The Bhaktivedantas. Not engagement of service of our mind, but engagement of service of other devotees. We are not qualified to engage service directly to Krishna. But if we see a devotee who's trying very hard to serve Krishna, and we serve that devotee, then the devotee is kind, maybe by a single remnant, or just by talking to them or hearing about them from Krishna. What happens? The sins in our heart get wiped out. Second, we become engaged in their service. And third, after becoming engaged in service, purification of the heart starts. And then something very nice happened. Narada says, when my heart became purified, then the very nature of the transcendentalist, in other words, the very nature of these Bhakti Vedantas became very attractive to me. So sometimes we ask ourselves, how do we get attraction to Krishna? Kunti Mata says so nicely in 1.842 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tvai me ananya vishaya, right? Madhu patir asakrit. This is a very nice point. Udvahata. This is the point that she's saying now. She says that Tvai me ananya vishaya. That means ananya. It means that she's trying very hard not to divert her attention to anyone else or anywhere else except to the lotus feet of Krishna. And because her pati, because her mati, because her attention is on Krishna, then what happened? She got ratihi of Krishna. So if we want to become attracted to devotional service, we must become attentive to the devotional service. Attentive to devotional service means other material distractions should not distract us. In other words, we must learn how to become free of the formalities of the material world. Otherwise, even while hearing about Krishna, we become distracted by material things. That is not being attentive. Being attentive means we are only focused on the topic of Krishna. We are not focused on who is speaking. We are not concerned who is next to us, who's on the chat group, who's not on the chat group. That is not our concern. Our concern is the message of Krishna. That is very important. So that's why Narada says that I took the remnants of the prasadam. By doing so, the sins left my heart. Then I became engaged in the service. And then I became purified in heart. And then the nature of transcendence became attractive to me. This was the journey of his purification. And then Narada tells Vyas Bhagwan, in their association and by the mercy of those great souls. See, a devotee never takes credit for what he has done because he factually knows it was the mercy of the Bhakti Vedantas. I, as the boy, heard them describe the attractive activities of the Lord. I listened very attentively. And because I listened attentively, Vyasadeva, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step. Increased at every step. So that's why Kunti Mata is saying that we must first have attention and then attraction will come. So when Kunti Mata says, let my mind not be diverted, just like Mother Ganges just flows to the ocean, she's not talking about attraction because that comes later. She's talking about attention first. That's what she's talking about. So the simple point of our spiritual journey is how attentive are we to Krishna? How attentive are we to the words of our spiritual master? How attentive are we to the words and instructions of Srila Prabhupada? That is very important. And you realize one thing, that when you are attentive to something, what is meant by attention is you are also submissive. Isn't it true? You cannot be attentive to something until you are submissive to hearing it. So submission is such a quality needed before we can actually train ourselves to be attentive. That's why Guru Maharaj always said, you must keep an mind, because an open mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So an open mind to the words of the Vedantas, the Bhakti Vedantas, means that we are attentive to Krishna. Never close the mind and the heart to Krishna. And very important point. As soon as he started hearing this, as soon as he started hearing the taste, the name of Krishna, and he heard this wonderful message of Krishna, then Bhagavatam tells us that his faith in Krishna became what we call unflinching. Unflinching. And as the taste to hear about Krishna developed, then Bhagavatam tells us the little boy realized that only in ignorance he had accepted this gross body. And in doing so, he had forgotten the Lord's transcendental nature. So this he did for 2 seasons, Prabhus and Matajis, in the season of rain and in the season of autumn. And he heard and heard and heard from the Bhakti Vedantas. And as the flow of his devotional service began, Bhagavatam tells us all the coverings of passion and ignorance went away. And he was situated on the platform of goodness. And he became very attached to the sages. And his behavior became very gentle. So this is another important point that comes in Bhagavatam. When we start developing a taste for Krishna consciousness, when we start associating with devotees, when we start hearing very nicely, do you know what happens? Our hearts and our mood become gentle. Bhagavatam says our behavior becomes gentle. There is a verse, I forget, but it's in the 1st canto, 1st chapter. Shaunaka Rishi and the sages in Naimisharanya, they praise Suta Goswami. And they tell Suta Goswami that, my dear sage, you are the person qualified to describe and speak Bhagavatam to us. Why? Because your behavior is gentle, and therefore your spiritual masters have endowed upon you all realization and the benefits of devotional service. This was also the mood of Narada as a small boy. By hearing and associating, his behavior became gentle, and his sins became eradicated. And what happened? In his heart, he had strong faith in them. He controlled his senses, and he followed whatever they said with body and his mind. So this is a very important point. Now, the real test for Narada comes. What is the real test for Narada? You'll have to mute your... yes, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. So what happens now is, Narada is a young boy. He's had the benefit of hearing the Bhakti Vedantas. His life as Upabarhana has passed. And Krishna is so kind that he has created a favorable environment in his spiritual journey. But now something will change. Something will test him very much. One day, as the great souls were leaving, because the time of autumn and rain had passed, what did they do before they left? They blessed and imparted all transcendental knowledge to the little boy Narada. And Bhagavatam tells us they initiated him into devotional service. Do you know why they initiated him into devotional service? Because he had qualified himself for it. Very important point. You will notice that before that, the Bhakti Vedantas did not initiate him. The initiation came actually at the starting point when he surrendered to them. But before they left, when they saw that his behavior had qualified him, they then initiated him into devotional service. And when they left, Narada did not forget everything. Sometimes when we finish a class, everything is forgotten until the next class comes. But here, nothing is forgotten. Narada passed his time, Bhagavatam says, in the affection and protection of his simple but pious mother. And his mother always made him aware of all the points of the Bhakti Vedantas. So he had the Siksha Guru, his mother, and he had the Diksha Guru and the greatness of his Bhakti Vedantas. They formally gave him this wonderful knowledge, but he got all this because of his mother. So we must always be grateful to the devotees who have served in their capacities as our spiritual masters. But one night, Bhagavatam tells us his mother went out to milk a cow. And as she was coming back, it was very dark, She was bitten on the leg by a serpent. And it was a fatal bite because she died. And Bhagavatam says that serpent was influenced by time. It was the arrangement of the Lord, actually. When Narada heard this, he was a small boy and he was very inexperienced in the ways of the world. But because of the Bhakti Vedantas association, that association gave him the strength and the realization so that when he saw his mother leaving and his mother leaving him and dying, he took it as the special mercy of the Lord. He saw the hand of Krishna. And in thinking that way, he left where he was. He realized that no one can give him protection. And he traveled through dangerous forests and cities. And finally, in a forest, he sat down and he decided to meditate on Krishna. And he meditated on Krishna not haphazardly. Bhagavatam says he meditated on Krishna by following and remembering the instructions of those souls. And without delay, Prabhus and Matajis, Krishna appeared in his heart. And when he appeared in the heart of Narada, it really satisfied him so much. It satisfied him so much. And this is a very important point. We must always remember that Krishna is already in our hearts. But in order to see him in our hearts, we have to purify and qualify. There are two words that Maharaj always told us, our Guru Maharaj. You must purify, but to purify, you must qualify. Very important. And qualify just doesn't mean qualification. Qualify also means discrimination. To become qualified, you must discriminate between what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. And Narada showed the way in both purifying himself by qualifying himself. And when he sat down, the Lord appeared in his heart very nicely. And as the boy relished the form of the heart of Krishna in his heart, suddenly Krishna disappeared. The form vanished. And then Narada became disturbed as a little boy. Why? This disturbance is not mental disturbance. Bhagavatam says this is the disturbance of hankering. He was hankering after Krishna. In this material world, we also hanker, isn't it? But we are told by Krishna and Prabhupada that it is a shift in consciousness. Our hankering is there and we cannot throw it away, but we can channel our hankering to devotional service. And so the boy tried again to get a glimpse of Krishna. He tried very hard. But he also realized that endeavor is one thing, but mercy of the Lord is needed for you to be able to see Krishna again. So then, when Krishna realized this young boy, innocent, was trying so hard in a lonely place, dangerous place, to try and see him, what did he do? Krishna then spoke to Narada. And don't forget, the speech of Krishna and the form of Krishna are non-different. And with pleasing words, he mitigated the grief of Narada. But he told him one very important point, and this is found in 1:622 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sakrit yad darshitam rupam, etat kamaya te anaga, mad kama shanakai sadhu, sarvan munchati hrit chayan. O virtuous one, you have only once seen me in person, and this is just to increase your desire for me. Because the more you hanker for me, the more you will be freed from all material desires. So nice point. And then he says another very important point in 1:621. He gives three very important things. In that verse, Krishna says very nicely that if anyone wants to see me, they need to actually get rid of three things. First, they must get rid of what we call avipakva. Their devotional service must not be immature. When our devotional service to Krishna is not ripened, then we don't have taste for Krishna. In that immaturity, we cannot see Krishna. We cannot see his hand also. So immaturity in devotional service is a great obstacle. And how do we know when we are immature in devotional service? Guru Maharaj told me that we will know when we are immature in devotional service when we are in the fault-finding mode, when we are envious, when we are never satisfied. That means our devotional service is immature. And if you look at today's verse, Namani Anantasya verse, you find that the three qualities that Narada Muni had shows us that these three qualities are evidence of mature devotional service. 1, fully satisfied. 2, humble. And 3, not envious of anyone. If these three are present in our hearts, then avipakva will not be there. Instead, it will be mature devotional service. So Krishna told the little boy that if one wants to see me, then he must come out of immaturity. The second point he said that's very important is kashayanam. One must get rid of material dirt in the heart. If there's material dirt in the heart, then there is no place for Krishna. So avipakva and kashayanam. And the third qualification that's necessary for us to see and feel the presence of Krishna is what we call yoginam. Yoginam means incomplete in our service. Sometimes we take up a service and then halfway we stop. Sometimes we say, I'll do a service, then we find fault somewhere, or we say somebody has not done something well and we drop the service. Sometimes we pick up our beads to chant, and instead of continuing and persevering, we just don't complete it. Sometimes we pick up a book to read Bhagavatam, and then halfway through we just give up and we say, what to do? So many things are happening. This is known in Bhagavatam as kuyogina. When one is incomplete in one's service, then it's very hard to see and perceive Krishna's presence in the heart. So this is an important point. So Narada, as a little boy, was given so much treasure from Krishna. And so Krishna said that if you want to qualify yourself, then these are the qualities that are needed. And then, what did he do? After speaking that way, that most supreme authority, personified by sound, unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. And what did Narada feel? Narada says, I felt a sense of gratitude, and I offered my obeisances unto him, and I bowed my head. Etavadutvo pararama tanmaha bhutam nabolingam alingam ishwaram aham chatasmai mahatamayashe shishna vanamam vidadenu kampitaha. So this is where we understand how Narada as a boy actually received the presence of the Lord and then received his instructions. He received it because he had a sense of gratitude. And because he was mature in his devotional service, all the dirt had left him on account of the Bhaktivedanta's association, and whatever service that he was taking up, he was persevering. Sometimes people asked this question to Guru Maharaj, how do you complete service? And he said, you can only complete your service if you are persevering, determined, patient, enthusiastic, and confident. If you have these 5 qualities, then your services will always be completed for Krishna. So this is a very nice point to remember. Then what did the boy do? Now after Krishna left, Narada, the small boy, did not lose courage. Bhagavatam tells us that he meditated on the Lord, purified by his mercy, purified by the association of the Bhaktivedantas. And so he endeavored very sincerely through his life. And he met with death, because death must come to all of us. But at the time of death, Bhagavatam tells us, at the time of death, he simultaneously met with death and he attained love of Godhead. Such a nice point. He attained love of Godhead and simultaneously he met with death. Just like lightning and thunder occur simultaneously. And so when this material universe was actually created again, what happened? That same boy who actually after dying was taken into annihilation, taken into the body of the Lord as Mahavishnu, Bhagavatam says when this new millennium was created, did he lose any remembrance of Krishna? No. Did he lose any remembrance of the Lord? Not at all. He was born as Narada, born as the son of Brahma. And today he is known as Narada Muni. And that is why sometimes people ask, how is it possible that Narada, the time when Narada left his life as a boy, and at that time the millennium changed, and so he was not born again, but he got absorbed into Mahat Tattva and Pradhana, and then later he came again when Brahma created him as Narada. So Bhagavatam tells us that's almost like 4,300,000,000,000,000 solar years. How is it that after such a long time, how is it that Narada had the capacity to still remember Krishna? How? For us to understand that, we should remember another important verse. And that verse comes from 1.6.24 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Matir mayi nibaddheyam na vipadyeta karhichit praja sarga nirodepi smritischa mat anugrahat. And the translation is very nice. Intelligence engaged in my devotion cannot be thwarted at any time, even at the time of creation, as well as the time of annihilation. Your remembrance will continue by my mercy. This is what was told by Krishna to Narada as a small boy. The Supreme Lord told little boy Narada that Narada, intelligence which is engaged in my devotional service will never be defeated. Whether it is at the time of creation or at the time of destruction, by my mercy, meaning by Krishna's mercy, we will always remember Krishna. And by the mercy of our spiritual masters, we will always remember the Lord. And the purport is so nice. Let's read it together. You all must be able to see it actually. Devotional service rendered to the personality of Godhead never goes in vain. Since the personality of Godhead is eternal, intelligence applied in his service or anything done in his relation is also permanent. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that such transcendental service rendered unto the personality of Godhead accumulates birth after birth. And when the devotee is fully matured, the total service counted together makes him eligible to enter into the association of the personality of Godhead. Such accumulation of God's service is never vanquished, but increases till fully matured. So this is a very nice point actually that we should remember. And this was also shown in Gajendra's instance. If you remember in 8.3.31, Gajendra the elephant for 1,000 years was held by the crocodile. But even though his wives, the generals, his children all left him, and he realized that I could depend on no one. Just like Narada Muni as a young boy was taught by his mother to only depend on Krishna. And that is why even when she left him, he was not perturbed. And that is why we should also learn to depend on Krishna and our spiritual masters. What did Gajendra do finally? Gajendra did something wonderful. He decided that let me surrender in all my perturbed nature and my disturbance, even while I'm circumstantially helpless. Let me surrender to Paramparayanam. Let me take shelter of one who is the shelter of all shelters. And then what did he do? Evam vyavasito buddhya samadhaya manohridi jajapam paramam japyam janmani anusikshitam. This is found in the 8th canto, 3rd chapter, 1st verse. And the translation is very important. Therefore, Gajendra fixed his mind in his heart with perfect intelligence and chanted a mantra which he had learned in his previous life and which he remembered by the grace of the Lord. So what can we understand from this? We can understand from the great life of Narada Muni, of how he became Narada. We can understand that this journey of devotional service is so much dependent first on our attitude. The more submissive we are, like the little boy, the more the Bhakti Vedantas gave him mercy. The more caught up we were in sense gratification, like Upabarhana, the further away Krishna was. We must also remember that we can only change our lives and become spiritual in this journey if we get the mercy of the Lord in the end. And the mercy of the Lord is given by the association of devotees of the Lord. Narada started his life by actually getting the first mercy. What was the first mercy he got? Not the Bhakti Vedantas, but it was the curse of the Prajapatis. When he was Upabarhana, there was actually the mercy. Sometimes great devotees curse, but the curse is actually a blessing. Narada cursed the two boys, Nalakuvera, right, and Manigriva. He cursed them, but the curse of pure devotee is always meant for their benefit. So they got the darshan of Krishna. And the Prajapatis cursed Upabarhana, that he be born with no material qualifications. And because he was bereft of material qualifications, he became qualified. And they naturally were his well-wishers. And Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone. So he provided Upabarhana as a young boy with a pious mother. And then he provided the chance for him to take association of devotees. So you see, mercy of the Lord, association of devotees. And both of this come because of the sincere endeavor of the devotee. Narada Muni as a young boy was very sincere. And that's why he was his love for Krishna and his love to follow the Bhakti Vedantas actually gained their mercy. And their mercy is coming from Krishna. And that is why today Narada is able to move around this world as he does. Namani anantasya hata trapa patan. Guyani badrani kritani chasmaran. Gam paryatam stushtamana gataspraha. And how does he move around this world? Kalam. That's how he's passing his time. But he's passing his time in the most pleasing manner. He's hearing Krishna's names. He's not proud. He's not envious. And he's always very self-satisfied. So this is the mood in which we must learn. This was the great journey of Narada Muni. Never underestimate the power of good association. And never underestimate the mercy of Krishna. And always remember, we can attract the mercy of the Lord. How? By sincerely and humbly attempting to render devotional service to the devotees. Krishna is never interested in our endeavors, but he's always interested in our sincere attempts. That I think is very important. Today, I was reading 1st of May, Srila Prabhupada's calendar, And Prabhupada says so nicely here, ointment is applied to the eyes for clear vision. So if one wants to see the Lord, if one wants to get love of Godhead, then we have to apply that anointment to our eyes. Then only we can see Krishna. Prabhupada says that God is not invisible. Because Narada, as a boy, had implicit faith in Krishna, and because he got implicit faith in Krishna because of Sadhu Sangha, the Sadhu Sangha gave him the right ointment to see Krishna actually. And Prabhupada says so nicely, a man who has cataract, he can't see, isn't it? But that doesn't mean the things that he cannot see don't exist. So sometimes when we don't take up devotional service seriously, we think that Krishna is very far away, or we think that devotional service is a myth. But it's not. It's very powerful. But those who are self-satisfied, those who are very humble by nature, those who cultivate this lack of envy in their hearts, how? By positively performing devotional service unflinchingly. They will naturally become great repositories for the great Bhakti Vedantas to give mercy to. And that is something we should take from Narada. We pray that Narada Muni will give us his great blessings. And I think Narada Muni will be very happy wherever kirtan is chanted. One time Prabhupada went to a very large hall, but there was hardly anyone. And all the devotees, who organized it, they were very disappointed. And they said, we are sorry, Prabhupada, that we had such a nice place, big hall, we're expecting people, but they didn't come. And Prabhupada looked at them and said, oh, you didn't see who was there? Narada Muni came and he heard. And for Prabhupada, that was the perfection of his existence. And it was the perfection of all the devotees' endeavor. So sincere endeavor attracts the mercy of the great souls. And on that note, let us remember that Bhagavatam is really about practical living. It's not about showy behavior, but it's actually about practical living. Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Shla Prabhupada ki, Jai Shla Gurudev ki, Ananta Kodi Vaishnava ki, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Thank you very much, Vaman Chetra. Anand Prabhu, thank you for organizing this as always. Thank you to Prabhu also. Are there any questions, comments, realizations that we would like to hear? That would be nice.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for such a wonderful class.
Anand Prabhu, happy to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just one question, like if we get three characters like Bharat Maharaj, Narad Muni and Dhruva Maharaj, so they all left everything and they started meditation, but only the intensity of the devotion wasn't there in Bharat Maharaj, that's why he fall down, or what happened? Because as you mentioned, the Lord can see by only three immature in devotional service, then get rid of material dirt and kuyogiman now, means incomplete of our devotional service. So I think Bharat Maharaj has followed these things, but then how he got fall down from that position?
Very nice point, Prabhu. Bharat Maharaj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he renounced everything just so that he could spend time with Krishna. But Bhagavatam also explains to us that he was alone, and without association of Krishna, it was very difficult for him to focus on Krishna. So the power of having association is very important. The advantage that Narada had as a small boy was that he got a lot of association before he went on his own way. And that association, sheltered and protected him. But when Bharat Maharaj left the kingdom and everything, he came and he was alone. And because he did not have association, it was very difficult for him. So when he came again in the form of a deer, you realize that as a deer, Krishna gave him remembrance of his previous life. So what did the deer do, Bharat Maharaj? He always stayed around the hermitage of the saintly personalities. And at that time, he took association so he could remember Krishna. But he was very careful not to spend time with the other deers because then that association would not be good. So I think the message from Bhagavatam is that even if we are going to be left alone in this life, and it's true, I think in the purport of the first canto, 15th chapter, 50th verse, Prabhupada writes that at the end of the day, we all have to fly our own planes. Everyone will die alone in one sense. When you are going to die, people are around you, but you are only dying. But even though you may be leaving the world and you are alone in that journey, the beauty is when the plane is on the ground, Prabhupada says, you have the benefit of instructors, teachers to teach you how to fly. So that's why Narada Muni could fly as a boy, because he had so much time for those 2 months and he used it so well, and he was humble and he absorbed everything. And even though the serpent of time came and killed his mother, when he went into the forest, he was not distracted by anything. He just tried to remember Krishna. And there was no distraction for him. And very quickly Krishna came and Krishna protected him. So actually Bharat Maharaj is also a great devotee. But sometimes, devotees also have to enact some pastime so that we learn the mistakes, because we will make that mistake. So devotees are players, like Parikshit Maharaj. There was no need for him to become upset with Shamika Rishi. But if he didn't become upset, then how will we learn? Because we always are getting upset anyway. So some devotee must play one part, and then we have to see it and we have to learn from it. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This is Shanti Swarup here.
Hari Bol. Shanti
Hari
Swarup,
Bol.
Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. It was a really very enlightening lecture, but I've just got a small little understanding which I want, I'm sure you'll be able to help me. That is about Ajamil Prabhu. Now, Ajamil, we know, it was nowhere, at least from what we learned, but ultimately he reached the abode of Lord Krishna. So how do we see that, and how can I understand that, Prabhu? If you can enlighten, we'll be grateful.
Sure. In Ajamil's case, Ajamil stands for an important proposition in devotional service. See, in the beginning, Prabhu, Ajamil was a very pious devotee, and he was doing deity worship. As a young boy, he was very focused. And that also shows that how when we take up devotional service, very often we also become very fired up. But material nature is very challenging. And sometimes on account of some anarthas in our hearts or some purification that's needed, Krishna sometimes by his arrangement can put us in difficulty. Sometimes we put ourselves in difficulty. That is why devotional service is such a razor's edge. In Ajamil's case, what happened was, and it can happen to any one of us, he became distracted and he ran after this lady whom he saw embracing another man. And eventually all common sense left him. And even though he started his life with devotional service, he replaced it with material service. But the beauty of devotional service is that devotional service and the stock never goes away. It's dormant in our hearts, but it never goes away, because Krishna finds an opportunity as Samanjas to give us again that possibility of reviving it. So in Ajamil's case, even though many years passed by, still interestingly, Ajamil named his youngest son Narayana. And that is actually a subtle understanding of how the stock of devotional service is so powerful that even though he did not want to really have anything to do with devotional service, yet by the arrangement of the Lord, he named his son Narayana. And at the point when he was dying, Bhagavatam tells us that he did not even call for Krishna when he called Narayana actually. He actually called his son. But the power of the name and Krishna's ability to always be Bhakta Vatsal, to find a way to be Dina Vatsal, to help his devotees, is such that he sent his messengers because he accepted the very heartfelt and offenseless way, the innocent way in which Ajamil called for his son, not using Krishna's name like sometimes I would. I would think that after so many years of sense and enjoyment, let me end my life by just remembering for a while and I'll make it. But Ajamil did not do that. Prabhupada makes it very clear that he did not do that. And because he did not do that, Krishna pardoned him for an entire life of forgetting Krishna. But Krishna doesn't forget the devotee. But does it mean that at the point when Ajamil was being dragged away by Yamadutas and pulled back by the messengers of Vishnu, he didn't die at that point. He heard a conversation about dharma and the principles of religious and spiritual life between the messengers of Vishnu and the messengers of Yama. And after he heard that, when they both left, what happened? He repented in his heart. So the stock of devotional service remains with us, but it sometimes needs to be ignited by a spark. That spark is provided, like Narada Muni's point, by the mercy of the Lord through the association of devotees. Association did Ajamil get? He got the association of the Vishnu Dutas. He heard them and he saw them. And because he got their touch, it is called Brahma Sparsham. Because he got their touch, he regained his sense. He regained an understanding of where he left off. And then there are many verses there, Prabhu, where he genuinely repents. And Prabhupada writes there, when one genuinely repents for his mistakes, Krishna is revealed in the heart, because that is the nature of repentance. And then what does Ajamil do? He just doesn't sit there and live his life the way he led. He renounces everything on the strength of devotional service. He goes away to the Himalayas, and then he spends a long, significant time cementing his devotional service. And then at the appointed time, the same messengers of Vishnu Dutas, they come back. And now that he has qualified and purified his consciousness, he now is taken back to Krishna. So that journey shows us that even though we may become distracted, and it will happen to many of us, there's always hope. There's always strength in the power of devotional service. Na karhinchin mad paraha shanta rupe, nang shanti no me nimiso ledi hedihi. This verse is chanted by Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti in the 3rd canto. And she says, my dear mother, the devotees of the Lord are never bereft of their opulences of bhakti. They never go. They are not destroyed by time, and neither are they destroyed by weapons. So this is what Ajamil's life stands for, Prabhu. I hope it helps.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very, very much. It is explaining why and how Ajamil has been able to achieve what he achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Purna Prabhu.
Purna Pragya from Chennai. Hare Krishna. It's nice
Hare
to meet
Krishna.
so many devotees. Prabhu, one doubt.
Yes.
Narada Muni, as a son of maid servant, that was near the millennium end, or did he take many other births before he took birth as the son of Brahma?
According to Bhagavatam, it was towards the end of the millennium. So we have no evidence in Bhagavatam itself that there were other births in between. So I would just take it as what Bhagavatam says. And even if there were many other births, assuming, still we could understand that he continued his devotional service until the time came when the Lord decided that he's ready now to take up that wonderful position of the eternal spaceman of the universe.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Sudama Prabhu.
Prabhuji, one quick question. In the very beginning part of your lecture, you started by saying that mixed devotional service is not something that is very much recommended. But if we see in all our cases, at least in most our cases, I should say, that we start somewhere along the line and our devotional services are not like very pure. As we hear, we go on improvisation, we keep on purifying ourselves, and the process goes on. So how do we understand that in our context? How does it practically apply to us? Specifically, that point
The way to practically apply it, Prabhu, is to understand that all of us start the way Upabarhana started. There is always some mixture. But we should not be content to stay in the mixed devotional service. Prabhupada writes extensively in all his purports that the mood of a sincere aspirant is that he or she may recognize that they are very much befuddled and bewildered by material energy. And maybe our chanting may be offensive and our devotional service may not be very pure. But that doesn't mean that we become discouraged. It means we should recognize that we are in a position where we need to improve. We should reflect, like Parikshit Maharaj, examine ourselves. We should take more association. We should increase our determination to come out of the mixed devotional service and pray to the Lord's mercy that our journey, mixed devotional service, should eventually move to the point where we don't want to be motivated to serve Krishna other than to serve Krishna for his interest. So Prabhupada writes that it is the duty of every devotee eventually to come to that stage of pure devotional service. Prabhupada sometimes said jokingly that if you want to aim for something, you should aim for something big. Like he said, you should aim for a rhino. You should not aim for a small thing. So in the same way, Prabhu, we may have many defects, but it becomes our duty to know what is the gold standard. And the gold standard is Savayam Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yathor Bhakti Radoksaje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. That should be our goal. And keeping the goal in mind, we should be patient, confident, enthusiastic, follow the regulative principles, take association with the devotees, and never be discouraged, because Krishna is always having our interest at heart. Does that help, Sudama Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, pretty much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Prabhu.
Hare
I think I
Krishna,
should end here. Viraj Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It's up to you, Prabhuji. I think there are a few. I think Nitya Gopal Prabhu from Wellington has a question.
Oh, okay. Maybe one last question and then I go.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Haribol,
Very nice.
Prabhu. Nice to see
Hare
you.
Krishna. Hare Krishna, Dhanwad, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Dhanwad,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Prabhuji, just question regarding the name Narayan. Narayan, you mentioned about Ajamil chanting the Lord's name as Narayan because that was his son. But is it true that Narada Muni also chanted Narayan? And what is the difference between Narayan and Krishna? So in essence, what I mean is, why are they not chanting, Krishna, Krishna? Yeah. So why is Narayan being chanted?
Well, actually, Prabhu, when you read Bhagavatam very carefully, Narada Muni is explained, on many occasions, here that Narada Muni is chanting Krishna's names. In the outside world, when we see Narada Muni walking around, he's always saying Narayana, Narayana. But when we read Bhagavatam very carefully, we find actually that Narada Muni is always advocating chanting the names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are non-different anyway. So I guess on the absolute plane, Prabhu, we should understand and appreciate that any name of Krishna is invested, like what Sikshashtakam tells us. Someone can chant Govinda, Madhava, Narayana, and it won't actually hurt because the potency of the Lord is absolute. And of course, in this day and age, Narada Muni would probably be the first person to recommend that we follow the recommendation of the Acharyas to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And that is why I think Narada Muni was very pleased with Srila Prabhupada and gave him the potency to expand this movement, founded specifically on chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra as the seed of all that we do. So even though Narayana specifically from a spiritual point of view, is actually coming eventually from Krishna, but still because it is very much part and parcel of Krishna, we would be very happy if a devotee chanted Narayana, Govinda, Madhava, rather than chanting anything else, That's why we want names of devotees. When we name our children, they should be nice names, I remember Maharaj saying, some children are named like Twinkle and Dimple and Simple and all this. Why to put such names? Put the names of Krishna, so that just like we're all like Ajamil, Maharaj said. So don't take a chance. Put Krishna's name, because we all have rascal tendencies. We will move away from Krishna, but let's pray that at the end some common sense will prevail and we will be with Krishna. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. So Viraj Prabhu, with your permission, I take leave from Vaman Kshetra.
One question I had, if you may. Yeah.
Please, Prabhu.
So Prabhuji, at the point where Narad Muni has had association of the Bhaktivedantist, and his mother dies, and with full courage and in right attitude, he leaves for forest, and in forest he meditates, and Krishna gives him his audience within the heart. But and then Krishna disappears, and you quoted this verse quoting 3 words where Krishna found Narad Muni firstly to be avipakva, meaning immature, and then kuyogina, meaning complete in service, and kashayana, still having material death in heart. Of course, from like our perspective, it may seem to be a very high standard of test, especially for someone like Narad Muni. At that point in time, it seems to be he had already achieved all that. So how can we consolidate and understand that point?
I think it is absolutely what you say is true, Prabhu. These 3 obstacles to taking darshan of Krishna are very real and very difficult. But I think if we break it down and we pray very hard to serve and follow the spiritual master's instructions, and we are determined, then automatically by the mercy of Krishna and the devotees, we will be empowered to actually be able to get past these 3. Of the 3, I remember that Guru Maharaj told me that immature devotional service is very difficult, because chanting of the holy names cleanses one of all the dirt in the heart. But when we are immature in devotional service, what happens is we are proud of our service, and we carry material baggage into the spiritual life. That is very dangerous. But then Maharaj said, the practical way to get rid of immature devotional service is to complete your services. If you complete your services faithfully and simply, without any fuss, Krishna becomes so pleased. You take up an endeavor and you finish it for the satisfaction of the Lord. And automatically he will give you the maturity of devotional service. But if you start, you stop, you start, you stop, then on a practical level, Krishna doesn't become pleased. And where is the question then of mature devotional service? So that's the connection between these 3 that I came to understand from him, Prabhu. I hope it's useful.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you then, Prabhu. And thank you to all of you, Prabhus, Matajis. Let us pray to always follow the lotus feet of Narada Muni. And I pray that we continue to have such association. And I hope that even after the lockdown is lifted, we should still get this kind of association actually. What harm is there? So nice, so pleasing, keeps all of us engaged. So thank you to Vaman Kshetra, Anand Prabhu, very happy to see you just now and happy to take darshan of all the devotees. Hare Krishna. All glory to Prabhupada.
Special thanks to Prabhuji. And so on behalf of Vaman Kshetra, we thank all the devotees who have come to listen to this nice class by Prabhuji. And every fortnightly, His Grace Devakinandan Prabhuji will be speaking on a subject matter. And Krishna willing, that will continue to perpetuate, as Prabhuji mentioned. Thank you again, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anand Prabhuji, is there any more announcements?
No, from His Grace Devakinandan Prabhuji and His Grace Viraj Prabhuji has accepted for whole May month. They will do the alternate week discourses. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your association and allowing us in our devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Devakinandan Das Prabhuji ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's Wednesday, Prabhu is going to speak on Lord Narasimha Dev's.
Sorry, Balram, we can't hear you.
No, this Wednesday, Prabhu is going to speak on Lord Narasimha Dev pastimes on Central USA Central Time, 6:30 p.m.
Actually, I forgot it myself, Prabhu. Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you. Balram Prabhuji, if you can WhatsApp the details and we'll distribute it around.
Sure, Prabhu. It will be on Zoom only, so I will send you a message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Krishna.